So in this we are going to learn what is loops. So first you need to know what is a factorial, because I'm going to tell you by using that example. Now factorial is, for example, I say that 5 factorial, you have to calculate 5 factorial. So 5 factorial is nothing but the multiplication or the product of the numbers below that till 0. Okay, so if I say 5 factorial, then it will be 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1. Okay, not we don't have to consider 0, because then the whole product will become 0. So that is the factorial. Now as you can see, I have a program in front of me, okay, which is how to calculate factorial. And loops are present in every single language, for example C++ or Python, or even you can say Java to some extent. So I am taking the example of a Python program because it is the most easiest language to understand any basic things. So first I have initialized a variable num, and also I have defined the type, which is this is the integer type, and then I have taken the input from the user input, and I have to show on the screen enter a number, so that it will input the variable in the num variable. Okay, so this is the first line. Now I will initialize the factorial variable to 1. Okay, so the initial value of the factorial variable will be 1, and then it will progress as we calculate the factorial. Okay, so there are two types of loops. Okay, there is an if else loop, and there is an elif loop, there is an only if loop. If you want to state only one condition, for example key if something something, then print something. Okay, only till that. So there are three types of loops. There are also for loops and while loops, but first we need to understand this is the simplest of them all. So let's learn this loop. So in the English language, you know what does if and else means. So if is like a condition and else is the outcome of that. Sorry, else is the excluding outcome of that. Okay, so I have written here if num is less than 0, we have to print factorial does not exist for negative numbers, because less than 0 means negative numbers, so we don't consider that condition. So I have written if, and I have excluded that condition. Now I have written elif. Elif is a continuation of if. So if this, then this, else if. So I cannot write else if because that is not defined in Python, so I will write elif, which is the same meaning of elif. So elif num is equal to 0, then print factorial of 0 is 1. So this is also predefined that the factorial of 0 is 1, because 0 into 1 will be 0. So therefore we have defined a value for the factorial of 0. Now I have written here else. So if, then else if. Now here if is ending, okay, here till 1. So this is the continuation of this if loop. So I have written here else and colon for I in range. Now for is also a loop, but I have not used as a complete loop. I have only used this to show a specific condition. So for I in range 1 comma num plus 1. So if I is in range 1 and num plus 1. So uh, for example I'll say that if the num is 5, and if So I will write that I is in range 1 to 6. So the number is lying between 1 to 6, so then only we can do the future conditions. Okay, so we have to write define that for I in range 1 comma num plus 1. Now this for loop will be used in this statement, factorial is equal to factorial into 1. Okay, so what will happen is that I have used a for loop. So until and unless uh, this factorial will not go till 5, it will keep on multiplying until the next number. So for example, factorial is equal to factorial into I. Okay, so this is I variable. Now what will happen here is that it will check that factorial is 1, then it will increment num plus 1. Again it will calculate factorial, which is factorial into I. So now this time it will calculate 1 into 2, it will get 2 as a factorial. Now again the for loop will run and it will see that I is in range. Again it is in range 1 to 6. So again it will increment 2 plus 1 3, and then it will again multiply with the factorial because I is 3 now and factorial is 2. So factorial is equal to 2 into 3. Now again it will go increment plus 1, then it will come as result 4. Then again it will multiply 3 by 4, which is 12, and the previous result was 1 into 2 into 3, which is 6. So 6 into 4, 24. Now again that 24 will be multiplied by 4 plus 1, 5. 24 5 are 120. So now what will happen is that we have reached till 5. Now it will if it will increment plus 1 6, then this condition will go wrong. It will prove false. So it will check, but it will not run this. It will jump. It will jump to this print statement because the condition is proving false. So it will print the value, whatever is that value. In our case, it is 120. So let me show you. So enter a number, for example 5. So the factorial of 5 is 120. So in this way, you can see that how we have used here two loops, if else loop and for loop. So now this else part is also called as a nested loop because I have used a for loop inside an else loop, and you can do that in many languages, in many cases where you have to uh, check two or three conditions together. So for example, you have seen that using Python we print different patterns, or we different uh, patterns or shapes in Python. So in that we use two axes, which is the x-axis and y-axis. So we use their for loop inside a for loop because we have to check both the conditions simultaneously. Okay, so for that we have used nested loops here. So I hope that you understood uh, how do loops work. So in this case, if loop is a one time loop, okay, it will check one condition, it will print whatever is, it will move on to the next line. Okay, else loop is also the same. So these are called as conditional statements. Okay, if and else are called as conditional statements, so they only check one condition and then they move on to forward. But loops, the loops, the literal meaning of the loops is that they will go on and on until a particular condition has reached. So in this case, for is a loop, and if and else are conditional statements which check the condition and they print the appropriate result, or they do the performed operation, etc, etc. So I hope that you have understood what are loops, and we are going to learn about while loop, do while loop in the next chapter. Thank you.